Trompe de Pontier, le bus fantôme de Flecky Bennett'S par maintenant.
Can't hear me. Nope.
Hello my friends, how are you all doing? Oh, it's good to see you all once again here in Flecky Land on our virtual ghost bus. Once again we've come over to Paris tonight. Oh yes we have. Sick to death of looking out the window at Gorton, and I bet you're sick of where you're looking at too. So we've gone over to Paris, and it's just one certain area of Paris, an area called Montmartre. Oh yes, I bet a few of you have been to Paris, haven't you? But not recently. So good evening everybody, hope you're all well. Bonsoir, or speak it like a native. Now my friends, it's a piss poor night in Paris, like it was last time in Manchester. It's raining again. You don't have to look outside your window here in Manchester to know it's pretty a dismal night, and it's raining hard. Let's have a look out of your left hand window. Come on, let's have a look out the left hand window everybody. Yes, oh, pushing it down. Isn't it, Buggerlugs?
Certainly is.
Terrible night for it. But what a beautiful view. What a beautiful view out of your window of the Moulin Rouge. Look at it. Isn't it beautiful? So, the Moulin Rouge translates to Red Mill or the Red Windmill. And it's absolutely a stunning building. Now, we're going to go inside there. You're going to go inside. You're going to go inside the Moulin Rouge. It's usually about £100 per person just to go in without any drinks or any food. They take your phones off you. They tell you can't use your phones. You can't do any filming. You can't do any photography. But listen, I managed to get some dodgy video off YouTube so we can have a look what it's like inside. Let's go in. Come on, Emma, put it on. It's a very strange night out in there, I can tell you. Me and Buggerlugs went last year, oh, when times were good. But yes, that's inside the Moulin Rouge. And that building as it is now has been there since 1921. But there was an older Moulin Rouge before that, which was built in 1889. And the same year that the Eiffel Tower was built in Paris. So just think about this. In 1888... there was no Moulin Rouge and no Eiffel Tower. So just over 100 odd years ago, two of its most iconic things you see on postcards and everything else weren't even there. So yes, so the old Moulin Rouge was there, built in 1889, let's get it right, 1889. And it was the first building in Paris to have electricity. And that's probably what caused it to burn down. Here's well, I've done a little illustration what it might have looked like burning down. Let's have a gander at it. There it is, in flames, going up in flames. That's how the original Moulin Rouge ended, going up in flames. So it was rebuilt in 1921. But it's always been a really expensive place to go to. I mean, all of Paris is expensive, but particularly the Moulin Rouge, and that's because they've always wanted to attract wealthy tourists and businessmen and wealthy Parisians. That's why the prices have always been through the roof. Because what it was, that area of Montmartre was a really strange area. It was described as, let me tell you this, the Bohemian mountain of morbid attractions. You will but not believe the places I'm going to take you around on this virtual ghost bus tonight. But the Parisians and the wealthy tourists wanted to be poor for a night. They used to love acting like they were poor, like they were from the streets. And that's why it got this reputation of being full of strangeness, weirdness and vice. Ooh. Now, you may know that the Moulin Rouge is associated with a dance called the can-can, where the women kick the legs up and down, showing their knickers. Back in the early days, well, their knickers were crotchless knickers, so you can imagine throwing your legs up and down. It was a right show, wasn't it? And the can-can dance was invented when all these businessmen and wealthy tourists had a few scoops. They start getting a bit amorous, start to grope the dancers. And the can-can dance was developed to kick the punters in the face. A quick, swift foot to the face usually stopped them in their tracks. And that's how the can-can dance started, with the legs flying up and down. The best can-can dancers can do one every set, so they can do 30 kicks in 30 seconds. One, that's going to split your kipper, isn't it? Ooh, painful. I've actually had one of the Moulin Rouge dancers on my Chorlton Ghost Walk once, and I was asking, she says, oh, it's a hell of a job. They still perform twice and 3 times a night, kicking the legs up and down, up and down. But that's what the can-can was invented for, to stop the dodgy punters in their tracks, kick them in the face. So there was quite a few famous dancers over the years, and there was one that was called the Queen of Montmartre, and she was known as La Goule, and it actually translates to the glutton. And she got this nickname because what she used to do, she used to dance around the tables, and it was what we call back in the day a beer burglar. She would go up to people's drinks as she danced around, swiftly swipe it off the table, trough it down in one, put the glass back down again, and carry on dancing around with her legs all over the shop. And if anybody approached her and said, excuse me, you've drank your drink, that's a picture of her now you can look at, kicking her leg up. And anybody said to her, excuse me, you've just had my drink, she would beckon you over to her, lift her skirt up to show you her crotchless knickers that had a love heart stitched on them, and as you were looking at it, she'd kick your hat off, and that's what you used to specialise in. She was the highest paid dancer and star in Paris at that time, but she got a bit big for her boots, and decided she was going to leave the Moulin Rouge and start her own nightclub. It never happened. She left the Moulin Rouge. She was a chronic alcoholic, and she ended up selling peanuts on a street corner, working for peanuts. She really was. And then another new dancer moved in, and she was known, well, it's La Melanite. She was known as La Melanite. Her name was Anvil. That was her surname, Anvil. La Melanite. And it translates to dynamite in our language. So she was basically Miss Dynamite. And let's have a look at her. This is her doing the old splits. Oh, yes. They could all do the splits. They were very, very supple them days, Buggerlugs. Not saying that to you for any reason at all, That was Miss Dynamite of the time, and she was really, really popular. She was more popular than La Goule, but she'd had a very shady past. Just before she became a dancer at the Moulin Rouge, she'd been in a mental asylum suffering from women's hysteria. Now, any woman that were giving you a bit of jip in the past, any man could say, my wife's insane, send us to the asylum. And there was many conditions known as female hysteria. While she was locked in the asylum, she tried to top herself a few times, and it was only learning to dance inside the asylum which saved her life. She came out, she got a job at the Moulin Rouge, and she was called Miss Dynamite because she used to spin her legs around, a bit like the river dance. Her legs were all over the bloody shop. People loved her with a passion, and she became their number one. She was a new queen of Montmartre. So people really loved her. And she loved the place so much that her ghost is still supposed to be present inside the Moulin Rouge. One of the first horror films ever, a black and white horror film called, let's look at the poster, Le Fantôme of the Moulin Rouge, was filmed inside there. You can watch that film for free on YouTube, just Google it, and you'll find it. And as I say, it really is a haunted place. But it's haunted by the ghost of Nicole Kidman. I kid you not. Nicole Kidman. Now, you'll all have seen the film Moulin Rouge, Nicole Kidman. She played a character called, what's her name? Satine? Satine. Now, they said it was based on, partly, there was a dance called Satine, and also on Anvil, Miss Dynamite, a cross between the two characters Baz Luhrmann based the character on. But Satine's ghost, the ghost of Nicole Kidman, is supposed to haunt the Moulin Rouge to this very day. Now, in the early 1900s, excuse me, bit of windy pops there. Are you all having a drink tonight, by the way? Good, I'll come back to that in a minute. But gosh, that. In the early 1900s, the Moulin Rouge closed for a short time, but they had flats above, and they still got flats above it. And one of the famous dancers carried on living in the flats while the Moulin Rouge was closed. And I think it was while the war was on, actually. And she said that in the night time she could hear somebody down in the shore bar. She could hear music playing and people chattering. And she'd go down there and there was nobody down there. Obviously it was closed. Then one day she crept downstairs. She heard this female's voice. She went in and she saw floating above the balcony the ghost of Satine. Satine? Satine, I was right. I got it right. She was floating a foot above the balcony with her red hair flapping behind, as I've illustrated here. No wonder it takes me 2 weeks to do these. And so that ghost has been seen a few times. People walking past the Moulin Rouge to this very day said they look up and something catches their eye and they see Satine stood in the window for a few seconds. And when she notices she's been spotted, she sort of disappears back into the darkness of the Moulin Rouge. So that is the ghost of Satine. Now, in the war, the Germans invaded Paris and they took the Moulin Rouge as one of their headquarters. And a German officer wrote this in his diary that it was haunted. He put in his diary that many a time we hear footsteps in rooms above us. We go up to them rooms and we go up to the top balcony and we see a woman in the corner, then she vanishes again. And he put, it's been terrifying. We've had to leave the Moulin Rouge. It seems this ghost is not terrified of the mighty Nazis. And they left there because of the ghost of Satine. So, my friends, shall we go for a little drive? Are you ready, everybody? Have you all got your drinks? We've got a bit of, I'm having a bit of Vin Rouge now. Now, I put a post on yesterday suggesting different drinks if you could have them, because they serve particular drinks in certain places in Paris. But doesn't matter. We're just going to drive now to what was the best theatre in the world. Put your foot down, Buggerlugs. Let's go. Hello! Are you still with us, everybody? Piss poor night, isn't it? Oh, you're enjoying a little sightseeing view through Paris? It's lovely, isn't it? So we've just come from the Moulin Rouge, and tonight we've got a special, well, I've done the special windows for you in the bus. Now what's going to happen basically, as you look through the window, you'll see what's there now, and then we're going to switch. Buggerlugs, let's have a look at Buggerlugs, by the way. She's in the driver's seat tonight. Have a look at her. She's ready. There she is. Say hello to everybody.
Hello.
Hello. And what she's going to do is press a special button, right? And what will happen is the window will go back in time and show you what used to be there. You couldn't make it up, could you? Sure. Let's have a look out of the left-hand window, everybody. So as you're looking out the left-hand window, you'll see there's a bit of a, well, it's a modern theatre now, a modern front anyway. It's now a sign language theatre. But that theatre was one of the best theatres in the entire world. All you lot that love a bit of weirdness, horror and spookiness would have been there every night like me. Oh, the magic window's starting to work. Better wind down my throat. Oh, it's changing. We're going back in time. Here we go. Look at that. You're now looking out the left-hand window at the Grand Guignol Theatre. Look at its beauty. Absolutely wonderful. So yes, my friends, that is the Grand Guignol Theatre, and I would have been there every single night. For you lot that love the weird, the wonderful and ghostly stories, oh my God, you'd have loved it. That theatre started in the 1890s, and it was called the Grand Guignol, the Theatre of Terror and Horror. Oh yes. Now the name, first of all, is a horrible reason for the name. Grand Guignol means big puppet. And the reason they had big puppets was because of this machine. There was a machine in Paris which operated quite a lot over the years called Madame Guillotine. And that's the guillotine. And many people were beheaded. And what they used to do, after they'd chop the noggin off, one of these, well, with skin on obviously, they would get the headless corpses off the guillotine, take them away and do puppet shows with the headless bodies, with the decapitated bodies, big puppet shows, and they were called the Grand Guignols. So that's where they get the name from, the Grand Guignol, the Theatre of Terror and Horror. So let's have a little look inside, shall we? Here we go. Let's have a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, please enter.
Oh, that's the Grand Guignol inside there. The Theatre of Terror and Horror. Who'd love to go there? Oh, I would have been there. Shall we do what's it called? GoFundMe.
GoFundMe,
a crowd. Yeah. Shall we all have a share and buy it back and then turn it back to the Grand Guignol? The Theatre of Terror and Horror. Now what used to happen basically is, well, it was an old church first of all. It was converted old church into a theatre. It was very small. It only had 300 seats, which is probably good if we're going to do social distancing. 300 seats inside an old church. Because it had been a church for a long time, it smelt inside of incense. So if you've got any incense sticks at home, light them now. Get the smell of the Grand Guignol. Or scratch and sniff bus ride tonight. In fact, if you put your nose up to the window of the bus, you can smell it, can't you? You can smell it. Incense. It smelt of incense inside and candle wax. It was soaked into the wood. You were sat on wooden benches. You know, it was all very much like the church used to be, but with a stage built. So it smelt wonderful. People used to say it smelt like you're inside a tomb. I tell you, so excited about it. And it did these little shows. Each did 2 performances per night, and it was loads of different short plays. There was one saucy comedy, bit like your Carry On films, that kind of thing. Bit of semi-nudity and comedy. And then there was a really graphic horror play. And then some more saucy comedy. and then another horror play, then some more sauce to come, and then another horror play to finish with. And it was described as hot and cold showers. And it still goes on to this day. If you watch horror films like the Scream franchise and stuff like that, they have lighter moments next to a horrible moment. And they do that because the lighter moments are lighter because of the horror, and the horror moments are more horrible because of the humour. And they invented that. It was called hot and cold showers. And they also invented the fact that, you know, like when you get the Hammer horror films of the 60s and 70s, most of them vampiresses were topless and stuff. There's quite a lot of nudity in horror films, and that all came from the Grand Guignol. And it still carries on to this day, the Grand Guignol, because if you go to watch Woman in Black on stage, or recently The Exorcist, the play, or Ghost Stories, which was at the Lowry not long ago, that is sort of all down to the Grand Guignol putting these horror plays on every night. They were so gruesome, these plays, though, that a lot of the actors got injured. And they reckon it was a bit like a snuff film where some of the actors were actually killed on stage. There was one actress there, and she died more times than any other actress in the world. She's in the Guinness Book of Records. She died over 10,000 times in her career at the Grand Guignol, 60 different ways. And she was known as the scream queen of the Grand Guignol because she could scream like no other. And she was their main star. The best play they had, and I've just done a little excerpt on that film you just watched. If you saw that bit where there was a drill, they were looking into a woman's head, drilling into it. There's a famous play where they brought a woman into an asylum set on stage, and they left her alone with the other female inmates, and they drilled a hole through her eye and pulled out a live canary. And this canary then used to fly around the auditorium, and that was their number one. So it was so gory that they had their own doctor inside the auditorium every night, because people were fainting left, right and centre. But only the fellas used to faint, not the women, just the fellas. Now just think about this at home. If you're watching a horror film, let's have a look what the men do and what the women do. Women tend to like, if they're watching something, get a cushion, hide behind it slightly, pull the quilt up if they're watching it in bed. Men keep looking and looking and looking until it gets too much and they end up fainting. There's a picture here, I don't know if you can go to that one now, it's an illustration. Yeah, and that's an illustration that somebody took of what it was like. You see the men hanging over the balcony? Well, that's what it used to look like in there. And if somebody fainted next to you, you had to shout out in French, un, deux, trois, quatre. And one night they got 15 men fainted. That was their best night ever. Isn't it bloody wonderful? People were running outside vomiting because it was so gory. Brilliant. And what they used to do to shit the audience up for the second house, so the first lot were in there, the second lot are starting to queue up outside down this little passageway where it's positioned, and the box office used to come out with buckets of fake blood and just pour it on the streets outside while the audience were waiting to come in, and just say that's what happened to the last audience tonight, and they'd be terrified before they even went in. Now they used to say that this massive saucy comedy and horror was a great night out to take a date because it's a bit kinky. Alright. Bit fetishist. So what they used to do at the back of the auditorium, like in this country we used to have lovers seats, and if you go to the plaza in Stockport, there's still the lovers seats, them seats without an arm in the middle that you could put your arm around somebody and have a bit of how's your father. Well, in Paris the boxes at the back had these like metal brackets down each side, and if you paid extra you could have a metal window put in. So put the metal window in, let's have a look at it. Oh yes. And there it is, and that's what you'd do. You'd hide behind that, have a bit of how's your father, and then you see what was going on. So that's what they used to do in the Grand Guignol. Here's a few of the original posters. They used to make some fantastic posters. You can buy these. You can find them on eBay now and again. The original ones are worth like €260 each, but just look at them. There's the various different plays they were put on. They are wonderful, aren't they? Absolutely wonderful. Let's keep looking at them for a few seconds while I see where we're up to. Yes. So, yes, it was a great night out inside the Grand Guignol Theatre. Would you have loved to have gone there? Now, most of you will have seen the Grand Guignol without even knowing. And those people that have been on my Tavern of the Dead performance will know that I talk about it slightly there. But you've seen it inside now, which is great. But you'll all have seen it because there was a film a few years ago, well, quite a few years ago. I think it's about 20 years old now. But you've probably all seen it because it starred that ugly actor, Tom Cruise, and the other ugly actor, Brad Pitt. And it's called Interview with Vampire. Are you familiar with it? Yes? Now, there's a bit where Brad Pitt takes little Kirsten Dunst over to Paris, and they go inside a theatre, and that is based on the Grand Guignol. And the other ugly get, hideous, Antonio Banderas comes on stage and takes a woman's life on stage. Let's have a look at that little excerpt. Over to them ugly get.
His maker all too soon. For all his prayers gets no remuneration. The lesson endeth here, and it is this. Each one of you my clammy hands must touch. Each one must bend his forehead to my kiss.
I bet Antonio Banderas wishes he looked like Flecky Bennett, I'll tell you that. And I bet Salma Hayek wishes she looked like Boogalugs. Let's have a look at Boogalugs. There she is.
Can't see me.
Get on there. Get on. There she is. Well, you better tell them we're about to set off. Go on.
Oh yes, get in your seats. What are you playing at? Gotta go.
Let's go to heaven, everybody. Let's go to heaven. Hold tight. Ding, ding. Hello, we've arrived at our next destination, which some people would say was the final destination, but not tonight. So all these bohemians that used to come to Paris and to the Pigalle area and the Montmartre area, which this is, wanted to live like the poor, wanted a night of debauchery. So they go to the Moulin Rouge, watch the Can-Can with the crotchless knickers. Then they go to the theatre, hopefully maybe faint because it was that gory. And then they would make their way to the Pigalle again. And that's where we've drove back to now. It's just, this where we are now is just across the road from the Moulin Rouge. And it's had the very first theme restaurants and bars in the world. You know when we see these theme places like Fab Cafe and places like that and Hard Rock Cafe, there was none of that before the 1890s in Paris on the Pigalle. They invented the theme. Oh my God, what a theme it was. So, let's use the magic window again. I want you all to look over this time to your right hand side, and you will see through the window is a supermarket called Monoprix. That Monoprix's all over. It's a bit like our Tesco, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all over Paris. That is Monoprix. Not very inspiring, is it? Can you believe they knocked this next wonderful building down to build that supermarket in its place? You're now outside the magnificent heaven and hell, bars, nightclub, whatever you want to call them. Attractions, morbid attractions is what I like to call them. Just look how beautiful they were. So yes, These were the main reason why people came down to the Pagao. They came down for the prostitutes, they came down for the drinking and partying, and they came down to go to heaven and hell and all these different wonderful, morbid attractions which are no longer there, but I'm bringing into life for you tonight. So, let's again just have a look outside our right-hand window, and you will see I've highlighted what looks like, well, I just want to bring your attention to that side of the building first of all. That is the heaven side. So what we'd all do, we'd basically go into heaven first of all, and it's called Le Ciel, and that's the French for heaven. So we go inside, have a look at the next slide please. We go inside, we'd be met by the doorway first of all by somebody, an angel. So one of the waiters dressed in an angel costume with wings and a halo and a piece of wire above their noggin. And you would go inside there, and it was all gold gilded inside, and it had cherubs everywhere, and it this big long white table with a magnificent white tablecloth. And again, if we look at the next one, it also had a green lantern which made it look slightly well, strange really. And the ceiling was all painted with clouds and sky scenes, and you would sit down, and then God would come over to your table. He'd come over and say, what would you like to drink? And you'd order your drink, and it was usually in there a vin rouge. Vin rouge, everybody. Raise your glass. Raise your glass, everybody. Yes. So let's order a vin rouge. That's what you'd have inside the CL, because, as you say, red wine is the blood of Christ, isn't it? Yes, you think about it. So the CL, vin rouge, red wine was the drink to it. So you'd order it from your angel. So you'd order it from God. And then he'd bring it back, he'd put your glass down and go, thy will be done. And you sit there, you drink your red wine, and then this other guy would come along with a big key. And then every 30 minutes, God would come down on a cloud from the ceiling and sprinkle you with confetti, then go back up again. How bloody magnificent! You don't get that in Satan's Hollow, do you? That's the guy with the key that you're looking at right now. And he would come and he would say, come and follow me. So you would follow him to a back room called the Angel Room. It was like a little theatre. And you would sit down inside this room, and you would get comfortable, and all these naughty angels would come inside. And let's have a look at them. First of all, they were behind a glass screen. And these angels, these naughty angels, they were topless. I've had to edit that because of Facebook, because it probably won't be shown, it'll get banned. But they are topless on the original photograph. And they were the dancers between shifts at the Moulin Rouge. So they danced there, then they came and went behind that glass. And then they come out and dance with the audience. So a bit like lap dancing, really. A bit like lap dancing. And then anybody that wanted to become an angel, they would tie you to an harness, and you'd be taken up to the ceiling on ropes, and you would float above the other audience members. Oh, bloody bit like Circus du Soleil, but with the actual audience floating above them. And then eventually God would come back in and say, sinner, you're going to hell. And then we'd all be, you, definitely you, we, me, and you lot on the bus would all be sent to hell. Let's go next door. Let's have a look at it. Ooh.
From the depths of my heart came a great lonely cry. Heaven have mercy. Heaven have mercy. Heaven have mercy. Heaven have mercy. Mine's
Heaven have mercy. Yeah, great song that. By the way, that was Edith Piaf. Now I have to slow it down by 1, because if I don't, it gets caught up in the copyright and it will ban the video. So that's Edith with a deeper voice than usual. But that is one of the very good ones. Heaven have mercy. So just look how wonderful that was. Beautiful nightclub called L'Enfer, Hell. And you'd walk through that mouth, first of all. It had glowing red eyes. And you walk into the throat, which was all lit up green inside. and you've been met by the devil himself. Have we got a picture of the devil? Yeah, there he is. That guy, let's keep on it for a minute, Buggerlugs. That guy was actually the owner of both nightclubs. He owned both the places, and he dressed as a devil every night, and he worked there constantly. He loved it with a passion. He's a bit like Flecky Bennett. If I owned them, I'd be there every night. That'd be me. So he would meet you in the throat of the devil mouth, and yeah, and then he would take you over to a table. First of all, as you walk through from the devil mouth you go into this great big, well, a cave. It looked like a cave inside. But first of all, you passed what looked like, well, it was a cauldron. Let's have a look at it, because I can't describe it very well. Look at that. It was an actual cauldron that was lit underneath with proper fire. So all the waiters were dressed as imps in red costumes, and there's a fella stood inside that, as you can see. Now, what used to happen is the orchestra, a couple of musicians, like a couple of violinists would stand inside there. They will play the Faust Symphony by Liszt, and they were playing away, and as they were doing it, one by one the violinists would start to fall asleep, and the imps come along with a red hot poke them to get them awake again, and they carry on violining. So, is that the word? Violining? I like it. Yeah, the flames are lit under that, and they keep relighting them. Proper flames, yeah. And then you'll be taken into the next part and sat down at a table. Just look at that. Now, as you're inside there, it was very much red. And I've made a bit of a nice flame effect for you. All the walls inside there, come back to me, Buggerlugs. All the walls, let's have some special effects. Even on the bus we can have them. The walls had these writhing naked bodies, and it was called, let me just find it. I'll find it here. I've got to give you the proper word for it. It was an amazing name. Can't find it now. Where's it gone? It was called the Room of Distressed Souls. That's what it's called, the Room of Distressed Souls. So all the walls had all these writhing bodies. Behind the walls were gaps with flames coming up behind the walls, and the sound of thunder. Come on, Buggerlugs. Give it some. Oh, yes. It was all lit up red. Thunder was going on. Buggerlugs doing the sound effects. Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, that's enough. Don't milk it. And thank you. It'll be all smoke. That's enough now. It was. She's milking it, isn't she? So you'd be there, sat at these tables inside this cave with all these naked bodies on the wall, flames coming out, the sound of thunder, smoke, because it used to be quite smoky apparently, because all these flames were like being created, actual flames, and it was, yeah, proper smoke, not dry ice, so it weren't very good for you. And you get a menu, and the main drink in there, now if you watched yesterday, I put a list of things you might need, was black coffee with cognac. I went and made this while she was driving the bus, by the way. And black coffee and cognac. So if you've got one, now's the time to drink it. I'll give you a chance to make one. Come on now, be quick. Well, if you can watch it on the repeat after and pause it while you make it. But this drink was called Molten Lava. That was the black coffee, and Brimstone, which was the cognac.
Yeah,
so
molten sin, wasn't it?
Molten Lava. It was a sin. And then you would drink it. I don't know what it tastes like. Let's have a taste. Very nice, actually. No wonder they used to drink it in there. Oh, it's a bit. Yes, so you sit there drinking black coffee with cognac, molten lava with brimstone, and yes, that's what you do. You sit there for a while drinking your black coffee, and then the devil will come back to your table. That's the guy that owned the place, and he'd tell you what your sin was. Why you're in hell. So they say, you out there, Gene Meads, say you are in here for eating three cheese and onion pasties from Greg's, and that sort of thing. You glutton. You say you glutton, and that's what they say. They say you now need to go through to the hot room, and you'll be taken through to another room at the back, which is like a little theatre. They had all these places, had little theatres in the back, where you would watch a contortionist bending herself from a snake to the devil and back again. And that's what it was like in the Enfer. Can you imagine? Can you imagine knocking that place down to build a supermarket? Now, I was thinking about this. In Manchester, for those people from Manchester, you know, Gillies has turned into a supermarket, wasn't it? Same sort of thing. And in Stockport, there's a brilliant old dance hall where the devil danced with somebody, and that's just derelict. So it's a shame what happens to these places. But it's been turned into a supermarket in, I think it was the 1970s, it first started to be changed into a supermarket. They had a small supermarket next door. They knocked through and destroyed all Heaven and Hell nightclubs. Now, astonishingly, I never heard of him, but again, a lot of the stuff that goes on in Paris we don't find out about in the UK. But their biggest serial killer, a bit like our Jack the Ripper, was a guy called, well, nicknamed the Beast of the Bastille. And in 1998, he was captured inside that supermarket in the area which would have been l'Enfer, the Hell Club. And while he was captured by the police, he'd been on the run for 7 years. And he admitted while he was in the area which was hell that he'd murdered 7 women between 1991 and 1997. So it's quite strange that he ended up being captured in what was hell. And when the maitre d' used to go around and accuse you of actual sins, he confessed his sins inside the Enfer. Let's have a bit more of this brimstone and molten lava. Ooh, have you got one? Has anybody got one at home? Is anybody talking?
Yeah.
Anybody got a black coffee and black coffee and whiskey? Put anything you like in it. No? Okay. I'm finishing that because we've got to go on to our next drink. Really good performances. We're drinking our way around the Pigalle. So, Buggerlugs, let's go over to Buggerlugs. How are you doing over there? Put your little red light on. Hang on, she's getting herself ready. Give me a bit of heartburn. I know you does. Let's have a look at little Buggerlugs. There she is. Here she is.
Hello.
Oh, there she is. Are you going to set off and drive us a bit further down?
Is everybody ready? All buckled in?
Here we go. Here we go now. Clunk click even on every trip. Here we go. So we're carrying on down the Pigalle, and on our right hand side we're going to use the magic window again. So look at your right hand side, let's have a gander. And it's a very, very boring building there. We're looking at that one that's like a pale blue colour, and that is actually a bank now. But using our magic window we can see what it used to look like. We can see what it looked like in the past. Move your glass out of the way, I can't see. We can see what it looked like in the past. And if you can see, you can make that out. It says the dead rat. So my friends, yes, this what we're looking at just then was the best cafe on the Pigalle. The other ones were nightclubs and late night bars. This was a cafe, which was full of prostitutes, by the way. It's where all the artists like Monet and people like that used to go in to get the subjects for their paintings. You know, the nude paintings they used to do. And so it was called the Café Pigalle, because that is the Pigalle area. I'll tell you why it's called the Pigalle in a minute. Yes, so that was the Café Pigalle originally. But one day they were pulling drinks from the pumps inside, and as we were trying to pull a drink for a customer, it was all like getting clogged up with something, and it was like wouldn't come out of the tap. So they had to get some guys in, I don't know what they were in them days, but you know, to actually see what was going on, why the pump wasn't working. and they opened up the tube and there was a giant dead rat inside the pump, which people have probably been drinking beer past. It's probably been going through its fare and stuff. So from that day on, all the regulars got to know that it was had a dead rat in there in the pump. So they started calling it, "Are you going to meet us at the Dead Rat?" And they won't call it by Café Pigalle. Everybody called it the Dead Rat. Well, it was called in French Le Mort Rat, or Le Rat Mort, Le Rat Mort. And they actually put it in English because everybody knew it as the Dead Rat. So that's marvellous. Apparently all the walls were painted with dead rat murals, and the ceiling had rats all over it, and there were stuffed rats everywhere. And even the menu had dead rats all over it as you ordering your food. I thought, oh, that's a bit strange. But I was thinking, you know, like you don't want to put yourself off dinner and things, but you know the chain Slug and Lettuce, does that not put you off? You know, if you go in Slug and Lettuce and order a menu looking at food, especially like salads, and it's the Slug and Lettuce menu, that would knock me bandy. I've always said that. So people used to say, oh, imagine having rats, dead rats on your menu, but Slug and Lettuce makes me feel a bit gippy. Anyway, so they had stuffed rats everywhere. Now, Paris has always had a massive problem with dead rats and live rats. Even 4 years ago, all the parks around the Eiffel Tower were closed for a while because of a rat infestation. There's rats everywhere. Now, here's something for the kids. There shouldn't be any kids watching because this is adult only. Because as you know, I'm a bit, I like to be on the edge slightly. But some of you out there, some of you adults like a bit of animation, don't you? Oh yes. Does some of you like the old Pixar films? Yeah, like Toy Story and stuff? Well, there's one called Ratatouille. Ratatouille. And there's a little bit of it which shows a really interesting shop which is still in the middle of Paris. Let's have a look at a Ratatouille.
We're here. Take a good long look, Remy. Now this is what happens when a rat gets a little too comfortable around humans. The world we live in belongs to the enemy.
Rats! Yeah, that's Natural Shop. So it was in Ratatouille, they made a little feature out of it, but that's Natural Shop that's been in the centre of Paris since 1872, and it's famous for its window display, which is loads of dead rats. And I know a few of you out there, sorry Debs if you're watching, I know a lot of you have pet rats, but you know, what can I do? But the window is full of, well, there were rats that were captured, and then they were stuffed and mounted and put on like traps in the window. It reminds me a bit of when you go to All Saints, you know, when they have them old sewing machines, the old Singer sewing machines, a bit like that. The window's just one massive rats dangling there. And them rats have been in there for over 100 years in the window display. And the title of it actually means the destruction of harmful animals. That's what the name of the shop is called. And it's still there, centre of Paris, and it's still needed to this very day. It's our equivalent of Rent-A-Kill. So, let's go to our next horror club, and my favourite of the lot, because this is, if you've been on my Tavern of the Dead performance in Manchester, which will be starting again hopefully from October, if all's going well, please donate in the meantime, but you'll know the name, Tavern of the Dead. Let's go, Buggerlugs, let's go! So Buggerlugs has pulled up now, and we're outside the last of the horror clubs in Paris. So again, we're going to use the magic window. This time we're looking out of our right hand side. Have a gander. Let's have a look through the window. Now, as you're looking at it now, that is actually it's a mixed sauna, a naked mixed sauna. Me and Buggerlugs have been nearly dragged in there a few times as we walk past, haven't we?
Yeah.
But as the window clears, that's what it used to look like. Niente. Cabaret de Niente. Is that right?
Cabaret du Niant.
De Niente, yes.
Or
Cabaret de Niente. Now then, this, first of all, when it first opened in I think it was 1892, it was called the Cafe of Death. Cafe of Death. And people in Paris, quite rightly, were terrified about going in. They thought, oh no, I don't mind going to heaven and hell, but Cafe of Death, that's taking the piss. So they stayed away in the drove, so they had to do something about it. So they renamed it Cafe de Niente, which means the Cafe of Nothingness, which is quite genius really. But it was still dressed like an old-fashioned funeral parlour, a Parisian funeral parlour, or what was known as a dead house. And they made it look like that. Now, I've said this on my Tavern of the Dead performances, that if you've been to Blackpool Pleasure Beach, you've been on the Passage of Terror, you know that it looks like a bit like a funeral parlour from the outside, and that's based on what the old Parisian funeral parlours used to look like. So what would happen is, you would walk along the Pigalle there, and there was these green lanterns outside, like I've got now. And everybody that walked past would look like they were half dead already. And this man would, dressed in an undertaker's outfit, there's a big thick red curtain in the doorway, and he'd go, "Come inside," in French. And he'd pull you in, and he'd throw you into this room. Let's have a look at it. And as you can see, it is wonderful. Now, everybody would sit round coffin-shaped tables. And the walls were all decorated with scenes of death and destruction, because it was still the Cafe of Death really. There was a guillotine on the wall that was showing how it used to be used in action. There was skulls everywhere, like I have got right with me now. Yes, there were skulls everywhere, but not fake skulls like this. We're talking about proper skulls. If you've ever been to Paris, there's a place called the Catacombs. And if you come on my Stockport Air Raid Sort experience when I'm back up and running, I'll tell you all about it on that, because it has a lot in common. But what do you think of it so far? Thank you. So yes, they would have skulls, real skulls that were hollowed out with candles in the top. And it was... Hang on, what's she doing now? She's taking my skull off me. What are you doing? What's she up to?
can't really
That's
see.
pathetic. What was that supposed to be? I don't know. She's trying to do something. Anyway, so there were skulls in the wall, real life skulls. It was absolutely horrific. Oh, right, we've got a green light. Look at that. Ooh. The Cafe of the Dead. Let's go back to it again, the Cafe of the Dead. What it look like inside that first one you've just shown, that one you've just put on. The same one again, please.
That one.
So, yes, so inside you sat round these coffin-shaped tables, and then they would, the waiter, as I said, dressed like an undertaker, would come up and say, "What's your poison?" And that's where we get the saying from, "What's your poison?" And the main drink they used to serve was Madeira. I don't know if you've ever had it. It's like an orange liqueur. Quite an interesting backstory of Madeira, that there was a famous king, can't remember his name now, but anyway, he loved Madeira so much that when he died, he had his body put into a barrel of Madeira and hammered shut, and he's still inside that barrel of Madeira. But this is it. I don't know if anybody else managed to get has any Madeira from the post yesterday, or went out and bought some, but this is Madeira. It's a weird taste to it. It's like a burnt orange liqueur. I'm going to have a little snifter now. Oh, it's nice, nice. But what it was, when they brought, as you ordered your Madeira, you get a menu. And this menu had loads of different diseases on it, like cholera, galloping payaca, all sorts of weird stuff. If you come on my Tavern of the Dead when we're back up and running, and do the actual routine that they used to do at the Tavern of the Dead. Because there was all these diseases. So you say, oh, can I have cholera and a bit of plague, please? And they bring your drink back and they go, bon appetit. And you drink it. I've just had galloping payaka. And obviously it takes a bit of time to start to work. And as you're starting to go into a different place, you'd look around the walls inside there, and there was like all this weird and wonderful stuff. There was a skeleton driving a motor car on the wall, knocking people over. There was a big sign on one wall saying, "Death is a folly." No, I'll start that again. That's strong stuff, that. "Life is a folly which death corrects." Ooh. People were really spooked in there, but the spookiest part, which people found really spooky, was the chandelier that was in the middle of the room. Let's have a look at that chandelier. Now that chandelier was made out of proper, real human bones. And they used to tell the drinkers below that that is the bones of the bogeyman when he was alive. Well, since he's been dead, sorry. So there's a picture of the bogeyman. I'm pretty proud of that graphic. That took me 2 weeks to do that. Give generously. And there's the bones of the bogeyman, which was above everybody's heads. And that's what they used to tell the punters below. So then you would drink your drinks. Could I have a bit more of that Madeira, please? Thank you, waiter. I'm enjoying it. Are you having a good drink at home, everybody? I haven't talked too much tonight. There's so much to remember on this. The script is it's incredible. So you're enjoying it. I'm having a little. I've just ordered another Madeira. What's in this one, Buggerlugs?
Bubonic plague.
Bubonic plague. Cheers, everybody. Haven't we had enough of that with COVID-19? Have you had a little drink of that? Have some.
No.
Put your
It smells like.
Put your camera on. Put your camera on, driver.
I've got no room.
Put your camera on first.
Got me
Put your
camera
light on now. Look in your rear view mirror so the audience can see you.
I've got any lights. I've got no space.
Go on, look in your rear view mirror now.
Hang on.
Come on now, we ain't got time to wait.
Do you know,
Are you in there? Have a drink of that. What do you think of it, Buggerlugs? I know you're driving.
It's a drink.
I know you're driving, but you can have a quick snifter. It's nice, isn't it?
It tastes like Christmas pudding.
Oh, I don't think it does. I don't like Christmas pudding.
It does.
Does it?
It's like minced meat.
Oh, mince meat? Like in a bloody shepherd's pie?
No, that's minced beef.
Ooh, come back to me. So we're still sat in the Tavern of the Dead. I'll just finish this off so I can do what I'm talking. Well, you've got to have a bit of fun as well, haven't you? We don't get out much. So, well, really don't. Now then, after you drunk your poison, an undertaker would come along to your table and say, "Come and follow me now into the cave of the dead." Oh, yes. So we're going into the cave of the dead now, Buggerlugs. Take us in there. Now, you would sit on benches which were made from actually old coffins, so it wasn't very nice. And it'd say to one of the audience, well, you'd all get a chance if you wanted to. A bit like in the heaven, this hell, where you got stuck up to the ceiling if you wanted to be an angel. In here, it'd say, "Come and lie in the coffin." So I remember the audience would go into that, and as you can see at the end of the room was a coffin. And then they would use this special effect, and they would change into this. A skeleton. And the people in the audience, and remember this is the 1890s, were absolutely flabbergasted. They're gassed and never been so flabbered as to see what was in there. And then they would go back to the first picture again, and they would change them back. Oh, yes. And that effect, there was no CGI in them days, was called Pepper's Ghost. Me and Buggerlugs, I wanted to give you a demonstration of how Pepper's Ghost works, but it's so difficult. It's basically plates. So, easiest way to describe it is if you go to one of your windows at night and you have all your lights off inside, and you look at somebody outside your window and they've got their face lit up like this, and then you light your face up with one inside the window, you can sort of superimpose each other's faces onto each other's. And that's what Pepper's Ghost is. You know all these shows when like the Ronnie James Dio, and they've had Elvis, and they've had Buddy Holly, Roy Orbison and Whitney Houston doing these like hologram shows. That is basically using the technology of Pepper's Ghost, which dates back to the 1700s when it was invented for a play by Charles Dickens. Where the audience was there, they were looking for a plate of glass that they didn't realise, and then the reflection of a ghost used to wander through. So they used to do that in the Tavern of the Dead. It used to terrify the audience. But what a fantastic night down the Pigalle here in Paris. Now it's a nudie place where everybody goes in buff, in nip. So, Buggerlugs, let's set off back to the Moulin Rouge. So Buggerlugs has pulled up again outside where we started, where you got on the bus tonight. Oh yes. And in a moment we're going to drive off the Pigalle up the hillside. Now let me just tell you why it's called the Pigalle. Well, not why it's called the Pigalle, but let me tell you about the history of the Pigalle, shall I say. When the American army came over to Paris, they nicknamed it Pig Alley. Now, the most interesting fact is, let me have a look at you lads out there. Are any of you into your fashion? Oh, you are, aren't you? Yes, you. Yes, you're into your fashion, aren't you? Do any of you out there have the real Louboutin shoes? You know, the ones that are black? I mean, they are beautiful. They really are, with the red soles. Yeah? If you do have them, I mean, they're worth thousands of pounds. I was looking yesterday, even second-hand ones that haven't been resold are still going for £1,000 on eBay. But the original, I mean, you could get some on go-to-market called Le Baton, but Le Bouton. And that model, if you have got it, if anybody out there has got that, then you need to have a look on what it's actually called on the box. And you'll find it is called the Pigalle. The style of shoe is called the Pigalle. And the reason them shoes look like they look is because of this. The Pigalle has always been the red light district of Paris, as you probably gathered by tonight. Still to this day, it's just full of sex shops, but you can still walk down there and you don't get bothered by anybody. So it's the red light district, but it also used to be a bit like the Shambles in York, where it was the main butcher street. So back in the day, they used to, you know, cuss all the pigs up and everything. Pig alley. They used to hang all the pigs up. They used to slaughter them, and all the blood of the pigs used to pour out into the streets of the Pigalle. Now the prostitutes will be walking up and down Pigalle all day, all night long, with their black high-heeled shoes on, and then they would go home to their partners. Then their partners would then, if they suspected their wife was on the game, would pick up their shoes, look on the soles of their shoes, and if their soles were red, it meant they were covered in blood and they'd been plying their business down the Pigalle. So Louboutin shoes, which are worth a couple of grand, are prostitute shoes from back in the day. So if you see anybody out there, you know these bright orange women with clown eyebrows, if you see them walking through Manchester or wherever you live in the world, just say you've got prostitute shoes on there. They won't like it because they cost £2 a pair. Have you seen if May's on tonight? Did you notice?
No.
We have a friend that actually does tours in Paris, and she's actually from Montmartre, but I was hoping she was joining us tonight, but maybe she will later. So that is why it's called the Pigalle. Let's have a look at the picture, what I animated for you all earlier, to give you a rough idea of why it looks like that. There is a prostitute of the time, painted by one of the famous artists, probably Toulouse-Lautrec, and that's a butcher. Look at the graphics there, you couldn't pay for it. And as you can see, there's blood flowing through the streets, and there's a couple of the Louboutin shoes, which are covered in blood. Ooh. So, my friends, we're now going to leave the Pigalle area, and we're going up the little street that's by the side of the Moulin Rouge, and we're going to go past a cafe on your left, which is a very famous cafe, but only over recent years. Probably the last 10 years it's got really famous. Let's see if she's working tonight. Let's have a look. Look over to your left. Follow me, everybody. I wonder if Amelie is working tonight. Great film. I remember several years, well, just after the film came out, I, like everybody else, fell in love with Paris from watching that film. And I went to try to learn French at night school in Paris, in Manchester. And I remember the teacher saying, why do you want to learn French? Why do you want to learn French? And every single person around the table went, just seen Amelie. So if you haven't seen Amelie, it's all about the Pigalle, it's all about Montmartre, and it's a brilliant film. It's a comedy. It's not gory or spooky, but it's charming. And that is Audrey Tautou, who named herself after Audrey Hepburn, because she was mad on her. You don't see her very much these days, but I'm sure she's still acting out there. Now on your right hand side, let's look out the right hand window, everybody. You'll see a signpost, and it's called, what is it called, Buggerlugs?
Rue d'Auchamp.
Rue d'Auchamp. And down that little, it's a tiny little road. We're going to tell you what happened down there. So, have any of you lot? I'm waiting for you to come back to me. I know. I'm sorry, Buggerlogs. I'm sorry. Give me
Too many Madeiras.
It's good, that Madeira. I'm on the old Vin Rouge again now. Cheers, everybody. Now down this little road, which is called what?
Rue d'Auchamp.
Rue d'Auchamp is a house, and it's definitely Montmartre's Hammer House of Horror. Let's look at that. Let's have a look at that. So that's, you recognise that song, some of you? Yes? So yeah, in the back streets of Montmartre, just down a little, what's it called again?
Rue d'Auchamp.
I haven't learned that, I couldn't get it in my head. An actress, well not an actress, yeah she was an actress first of all, she was called Dalida. Dalida, have you ever heard of her, anybody? Probably not. She was a massive megastar in Paris and most of Europe. We're talking about the 1960s to the 1990s. She was a to 1987. 1960 to 1987. She was a mega star in Paris and Europe. Dalida. Have you ever heard of her? Probably not. So, she was born in Egypt. And she had Italian parents. So she was Egyptian with Italian parents. And she came to live in Paris. And she made Paris her home throughout her life. She was a great beauty. She even represented, she was Miss Egypt in London at one of our shameful, you know, what was it called? What were they called? Miss World competitions. But you don't remember any of them, do you, Buggerlugs? No, they've been gone for a long time now, but us old timers who remember the Miss World competition on telly, she was Miss Egypt. So she did a little bit of acting in Paris, and then she decided to take some singing lessons, and she became a really, really good singer. And she released a single called Bambino. Have you ever heard of it? Bambino. And this single stayed at France's #1 for 39 consecutive weeks. It still holds a record for the song at #1 for the most time in the world. Bambino, 39 weeks at #1. Isn't it amazing we don't even know of her in this country? The leader. And then she got so popular with that her early acting work came back up to people started watching it. Hollywood got interested and they made her an offer of a 15-movie offer, multi-million pounds, but she rejected it just to live in Paris. She said, I cannot leave my beloved Paris. And this area of Montmartre, she loved it with a passion. She got married, and she was happily married for a short time, but then her management said, it's not good being married because you're sort of supposed to be a sex symbol. You need to get divorced. So she got divorced for her career. And then it all started going tits up, literally. You can have as much money in the world, but if you're unlucky in love, you're unlucky in love. You will not believe her personal life. I'm going to try to document it. I might have to read it because it's that in-depth. But she was married, so she got divorced because her management said, you need to be single. A bit like Westlife and all them bands when they say, don't tell anybody about your girlfriends and stuff because it'll affect sales. It affects sales for people who knew she was married. So she got divorced. And then she met this Italian singer, and he used to write songs as well, and she being a brilliant singer, they entered a competition together. A bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, I believe. And they were on stage, they sang this song that he had written, and it was... And they went back to the hotel. He was devastated how it had failed. Even having one of the greatest singers in Europe on his side, it failed so badly that he took a gun and blew his head out. I think I might have a red light for this. He killed himself in front of the leader. And she was quite into him. He was her fiancé. And she couldn't take it. And she took an overdose of tablets. And she was discovered at the very last minute. She was in a coma for 5 days. And then she was... Well, it took her months and months before she got well again. And then later that year, she fell in love with a toy boy. Another Italian guy. And she got pregnant to him. But her management said, oh, it's not good for you to be pregnant to have a child. It really affects your career. We advise you to have an abortion. In fact, they insisted she had an abortion, even though she wanted a child more than anything. She had the abortion, but something went wrong, and she was sterile from that day onwards. So that was devastating for her. Then she met another guy. They had a relationship. She finished it. He shot himself in the head. Then she had another relationship. When she finished it, her boyfriend put his car in the garage, put a tube to his exhaust pipe and poisoned himself. By now she'd had enough. All her exes, and also her first husband that she divorced, he also took a gun to his head and blew his brains out. So that is, I think it's 4 of her partners killed themselves. Some of them inside the house in Montmartre. And in 1987, the leader, at the age of 54, decided she couldn't take any more. She left a suicide note saying, I cannot take my life, I'm sorry. And she died. It's a bit like when Princess Diana died for us in the UK. People are out there on the streets mourning, devastated, and she was really, really missed by everyone. Her house is down that little, what's it called again, that street?
Rue de Champs.
Rue de Champs. Her house on the corner just down there. And they say it's a haunted house. Let's have a look at the haunted house. She's been seen by people inside that house. She's been heard singing by people in that house. It is the house of horror of Montmartre. You're about to see a ghost right now. Here's a little film I made of the leader. Enjoy.
Quando vedo intorno a me che i bambini giocano e poi fingon di sparare, come mi si stringe il cuor, bang bang, rivedo te, bang bang, che spari a me, bang bang, quel suono sai, bang bang, non lo scorderò mai.
Bang, bang, my baby shot me down. So that's the leader that you've never heard of. So shall we now go up the hillside? This area is called Montmartre, and we're going to go up to Montmartre. Are you ready? Now listen, there's a quite tight little streets. Buggerlugs. She's only been driving on the other side of the road for a short time, so let's hope she does okay. But we're going to now drive through the little narrow streets up to the artist quarter of Montmartre. Here we go! So we've arrived up in the artist quarter. Oh, it's bloody dear up here, you know. But get your drinks out, everybody. Get your drinks out. Cheers. Do you know how much it is for a glass of red wine up there? £7 for a small one. £10 for a pint of beer. Oh, yes. It's fantastic up here. Let's have a little drink. I'm not going to have a Q&A tonight after the performance because, well, it's a long one, isn't it? So, any questions, anybody, before I give you the last story and before Buggerlugs drives us back to the Moulin Rouge? Let's, anything for us, Buggerlugs?
Just people commenting at the moment.
Are you enjoying yourselves, everybody? Or somebody said before about, yeah, they use Pepper's ghost inside the haunted mansion, don't they, at Disney? Yeah, to get them faces and stuff. Well, I've had a great time tonight. I hope you have as well. Bonsoir, ça va? Oui, ça va bien, merci. Oh, I speak it like a native. Anybody got a quick question before I tell you the last story? And then before we go to the Moulin Rouge. Come on now. We're not doing a Q&A after, but if you've got anything you'd like to say, or you've enjoyed it, or you feel like you've been in Paris with me tonight, I have loved it. And I can't wait to go back, and I hope you're going to go back. And if you have enjoyed it, this has been really hard work. It's been like
3 o'clock
in
the morning.
2 weeks of research and video editing. So if you have enjoyed it, please give us, you see, a pint of beer in where you're sat right now will cost you £10. So why not donate it to me in the tip jar? Ooh. Have you any questions before we move on to our last story?
No, just people saying it's great, it's fab,
Okay, well, très bien.
merci beaucoup.
Très bien to you, merci beaucoup to you.
Yes, we have been into the catacombs.
Have you? Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it, in the catacombs?
That's Karen Healy.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? Well, you must come on to my Stockport Area Shelter experience when you get a chance to see something very similar, just in Stockport. But yes, we're up now in Montmartre, and the name Montmartre means the Mount of Martyrs. It can be seen from all over Paris, so you can see the Eiffel Tower, wherever you go in Paris, most places anyway, and you can see Montmartre. It's on top of a hillside. It's the highest point of Paris. If you watched or you bought my virtual London Highgate Ghost and Vampire Walk, that's very similar to Montmartre. It's up on the highest point in London. So this is the highest point in Paris. We're now sat in the artist quarter having a nice drink of vin rouge. We're actually having tonight, when we finish this, a bit of beef bourguignon.
It smells absolutely amazing.
We've gone for it tonight.
It's making my mouth water.
We can't afford any potatoes with it, so if you can donate, that'd be nice. So, we're here outside the artist quarter. It's wonderful up here. This is the Montmartre, the Mount of Martyrs. And it's called the Mount of Martyrs for a very gory reason. So, the Bishop of Manchester used to be called Bishop Denis, or Denis. That's how Blondie said it, wasn't it? Did I say Manchester? Bishop of Paris, sorry. You know, like Blondie said, Denis, pronounced like that. The Bishop of Paris. I said Paris now, haven't I?
You have now, but
Thank
you
you.
didn't. You said Manchester.
Well, you know. The Bishop of Paris. It's that bloody Madeira, excuse me. Hey, now listen. The Bishop of Paris was called Bishop Denis, or Dennis, as we like to say, Bishop Dennis. This is many, many hundreds of years ago, and he fell out of favour with a Roman emperor that was in Paris. Apparently the Romans took over Paris for a while, fell out with him, and Bishop Denis was put in prison for quite a long time, and then just round the corner from where we're sat now in this bar, just round this corner, over here, there's a park. Well, it's a park now, but it wasn't then. Denis was taken in there and his head chopped off. This is what it would have looked like, everybody. This is a famous painting of Denis, Bishop Denis, with his head dripping blood, his stump of his neck squirting blood out. Oh yes, it was a nasty, nasty thing.
With his head tucked
underneath his arm he walks the Montmartre. So yes, he was there. So what happened? He cut his head off. He bent down and picked his own head up, right? Like you do. And then, with his head in his hands, like this. Actually, let's use that. Perfect for it, John. Like this. He walked down the hillside of Montmartre, the Mount of Martyrs, with his head like this, with his neck spurting blood out. I need to disappear my head somehow, but I can't do it.
I can disappear your head.
She could cut my head off. He walked down the side of Montmartre, carried on to several miles into the city centre of Paris, saying, and his head was still speaking, his head was saying, "Repent thy sins! Repent thy sins!" All the way as he walked along for several miles into the centre of Paris, his head was going, "Repent thy sins! Repent thy sins!" Eventually, through blood loss, he collapsed. Like you would. And he fell on the spot, and some people got hold of his body without his noggin, threw his headless stumped body, headless stumped? Yeah, his headless stumped body, his headless body, into the Seine, threw it into the Seine, and then some of his followers, a bit like they did with that statue a few weeks ago when they tried to drag it out of, was it Leicester? You know, the statue. Well, anyway, they dragged his body out of the water.
Did he get the Seine in his membranes?
He was insane. He was insane. Yes, so his headless body was dragged out of the Seine, and on the spot where he collapsed after he walked down from Montmartre carrying his head, he was buried in that spot, and that spot is now called Saint Denis. So if you ever go to Paris, you stay in Saint Denis. That's the reason why it's called Saint Denis. His noggin was taken and buried in Notre Dame, where Quasimodo lives, buried in there. And that's what happened to Saint, and he's known as Saint Denis. And if you go to Notre Dame, there's a statue of him there holding his noggin. And just around the corner here, where his head was chopped off, let's have a look at it. There's a park, and that park is got a statue of Saint Denis holding his noggin in front of him. It's a wonderful little place. So he lost his head, and that's what happened to Saint Denis. So my friends, I hope you've enjoyed yourselves tonight. I've really enjoyed your company. Thank you for coming to Paris with us. Thank you for Buggerlugs for driving. She's done a marvellous job. Shall we look at Buggerlugs one last time? Oh, there she is. Oh, there she is. God bless her. If you have enjoyed it, please give generously to the tip jar. We're going to see you again in 2 weeks' time when we're going back to the old porter's chair for a more relaxed version, all about Macclesfield. Get your Macclesfield in Macclesfield. So, my friends, leading out with Edith Piaf, slightly slower because of copyright. Jean a regret. I have no regrets. Repent thy sins. See you next time.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien.